what that ends up leading to is a person's ego and self-worth being inflated to a point to where it's unhealthy.
In this interview, me and Asmongold discussed why so many big streamers have pitfalls of ego and disillusionment with their community, and how he, as a large streamer, stays grounded. It was a great discussion, and I think you'll enjoy it. Check out the full parasocial problem with live streaming video if you haven't yet.
Okay, I think I'm pretty much good.
All right, so I'm here with Asmongold, World of Warcraft streamer, YouTuber for many years. Asmongold, why do you think people watch Twitch?
Because they're fucking bored. Like, that's probably the main reason. Because if you're doing something else, you're not going to go out of your way to go look at a YouTube video or anything else. People usually use Twitch, YouTube, all that kind of stuff as basically just as a way to pass time. I think that's the main reason. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other underlying psychological reasons for it, which is probably what we're going to be talking about here. But primarily, it's because they're bored.
And why do you think people are drawn to your stream versus others in the WoW section, or just others on Twitch in general?
I can't really speak to everybody on Twitch because, each game, I feel for an example, I don't really go out of my way to watch people that play Hearthstone because I don't really play Hearthstone. But what I can say is with the WoW section and with WoW streaming, that's mainly what I do. And I think the reason why a lot of people watch me is that I try to do things that are kind of off the beaten path in the game. And I also do a lot of things that involve my community and just other different ways to try to keep people engaged and invested in the show in a way that I think a lot of other streamers don't necessarily do. And also, I try to avoid a lot of repetition, and obviously my stream has repetition, every stream has repetition, but for an example, many other streams just do arenas, or they just do Mythic Plus or raiding or something like that, and I try to just kind of add in as many different variants of that as possible in order to give people the best experience and the most varied experience possible. I think variety is really important with streaming, and so that's one thing I really focus on with my streams.
I was talking to one of your viewers, he's like a teenage kid, Peter W3, and he was saying that he watched you for years, and the reason he really enjoyed your stream is that he felt like you had a very authentic presence, and that you treat your viewers like people, not like numbers most of the time, which with your view count seems like it would be the easier path to take, right? It'd be easy to have a big ego, but it sounded like you have a very humble kind of perspective. Do you think that's true?
I hope so. I think that's something that everybody goes after, right? I mean, there's nobody that wants to say that they have an ego, right? Unless they want to look at it in a positive way. For me personally, I try not to really... I think a differentiation here that you could maybe use for me is that I try to look at people instead of fans. I look at them as viewers, right? Because it doesn't necessarily imply the same type of worship as a fan does. Fan is obviously short for fanatic. So I don't like that. I treat all of my viewers and just people that are watching my stream as just like guys that I would probably maybe hang out with or not. And just like guys that like watching the show and just like hanging out. I try not to really make things too high and mighty. I don't really think of myself as above other people, really. I mean, there are things that I think that I'm better at other people at. I think I'm very good at doing a number of things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I think that I'm a better person than they are. And I think that it's very hard for streamers, especially once you get into a certain stratosphere of viewership, to have that same type of grounded perspective. And I think one of the reasons why I have that, there's a number of reasons why I have that, but one reason is because I haven't really changed my lifestyle a lot from before I started streaming versus now. As you can see, in my background, I'm still living in my upstairs room in my mom's house. And it's because that's what I'm comfortable with and that's who I am. And I think that level of authenticity does show through for a lot of people. With YouTube videos, for example, it's very easy to take a few clips or a few cuts from somebody and say, okay, this is who I want to be on camera, and just put that out there and say, yeah, okay, here I am. But on Twitch, it's much harder to have a cultivated persona that doesn't occasionally slip if your actual real personality is that much different. So, for example, you've seen plenty of times where there are streamers that are like, oh, all positive vibes, and then those guys turn out to be the most negative. Now, obviously, that's not always the case, but it happens very often. And, there have been plenty of examples where, you have streamers and the, quote, mask slips, and, you see that they're actually not exactly the person that they had intended to be. And for me, I've always looked at myself as just, I don't want to pretend like I'm somebody else. I don't want to pretend like, I'm this perfect, holier than thou person. I make mistakes, I say stupid things, and I'm a real person. That's all there is to it. And I think that a lot of people appreciate that more than anything, because in an age that we live in now where everything seems to basically just be fake, or I mean, like, how many times, I know you've probably seen this on Twitter, where there'll be a Twitter outrage and then you'll learn later on that it was construed in a way that was misleading. And I think that with YouTube and with Twitch and everything like that, you see that happening so much more often now, especially with content creators trying to pretend like they're somebody that they're not. And I don't really think that's a good thing. And I don't also think that it's healthy for the platform as a whole, and it's not healthy for the user base, because it gives people this idea, this impression that these streamers are these infallible people. And so it either disillusions people who are, more realistically based, and, they have more life experience, and they realize, like, okay, this is kind of just like their show persona, etc. But it also deceives naive people into believing that streamers are kind of like better than they are in some way or form. And I really find that very uncomfortable. Whenever I go to conventions or anything like that, I always kind of cringe whenever I see certain streamers that don't want to interact with their fans in a more visceral or real way. And I've always looked at streaming as just being a relationship between the audience and the streamer. And I feel like the more authentic and the more real that is, the better experience generally somebody's going to have.
Definitely. Do you think that because you were on YouTube for years before streaming on Twitch, and because you've been streaming on Twitch for years, I mean, certainly you've seen a big growth in your viewership, but it definitely didn't happen overnight. Do you think that helped to keep you grounded? Whereas some people, they'll blow up, really quickly.
That's an interesting question, because I've had a few points where my stream has kind of seen a certain level of like growth that's extremely high, right? Like the graph was going like this, like let's say, and then it's going like this. And for example, I think it was in June or July, maybe May of like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, where my stream went from getting about 10,000 average viewers to getting 20,000 average viewers, and even above that, pretty much in the matter of a few weeks. And that jump was, like, honestly, it was very, very big. But I think that one of the biggest reasons that I've been grounded, and I think this is something that it's not anybody's fault necessarily if they're not, is the fact that I'm 29. I'm going to be 30 soon. And I've spent a large portion of my life going to college. I've had real jobs, and I haven't necessarily grown up as like an 18-year-old kid into immediate, like, if you want to use it, stardom or immediate success into streaming. So I've kind of had a chance to build my own self-identity and my own personality and who I really am, separate from what my stream is. And I think that helps a lot of people if they spend a lot more time doing things that are outside of streaming. I can see a number of people, for example, that always have a lot of problems streaming, and there's like drama always surrounding them. And I've had this happen too. I think many streamers have. But a correlation, I believe, is that I see a lot of the guys that are, older, like maybe in their 30s or so, they don't have that happen as often. And I think that one of the reasons for that is because many of them have had like experiences outside of streaming, and their own identity and ego and self-worth isn't necessarily tied to their stream, which I consider a very unhealthy thing. With YouTube, it has been a slow, or it was a slow and steady thing, and I saw a lot of growth and a lot of success on YouTube. And streaming, it was the same thing. I was immediately very successful at streaming, and I think that one big reason for that was because of my YouTube channel. But on top of that, I think that there are other ways that you can measure that growth and everything. But you're definitely right that there are a lot of people who they spend their younger years being very popular on Twitch, and it gives them like a disjunct view on the world, and it makes it hard for those people to have the same level of perspective that a normal person does, which I think in the long run leads to a decrease in relatability and likability even among their audience.
You've talked a lot about the relationship between you as a streamer, or any streamer, having that trust with their viewers. You talked about that on your second channel, Zach Rar. And I've also noticed in general on that channel, you just tend to kind of share your thoughts very openly, very off the top of your head. Do you think that a big part of establishing that trust is by being open with your viewers as a streamer?
I think that it's either by being open or by being explicitly closed. So I know that there are a lot of streamers who don't really share any personal details about themselves, and I think that they can still have that level of authenticity as long as those personal details are not things that are about their personality, for example. So if like you don't want to talk about your girlfriends, or you don't want to talk about where you live or something like that, I think that's completely okay. And every single streamer should be able to decide where they feel comfortable on that spectrum. There are some people that share, how many times they've jerked off today. And then there are other streamers that don't even want to say where they live. And I think both of those are completely legitimate, and both of those can lead to an equal level of authenticity. But what it ultimately means and leads to is the relationship that the streamer has with the audience, the streamer has with the viewer. And that is fundamentally what matters. And that relationship is not necessarily based off of how many things the viewer knows about the streamer. It's more or less based off of the way that the viewer feels about that relationship. It's much more a emotional decision and judgment rather than a quantitative one.
Do you feel that there are any special barriers or hurdles when it comes to relationships with other streamers that maybe you don't have when it comes to having a relationship with viewers? Like, is there a big difference there for you?
Are you talking about a relationship, a romantic relationship, or a friendship?
Just just any kind of, like, it doesn't have to be romantic. Just like, let's say you're friends with a streamer.
Yeah, well, as someone who has had a romantic relationship with a streamer in the past, let me say that yes, there are a lot of wrinkles in that, and it does overcomplicate things. But in a more relatable way, let's talk about friends. Like if you're friends with somebody else, it's easy to become friends with other streamers, but because there's always the thing with streaming is that streaming is a professional endeavor, but it's also a creative endeavor. And because it's a creative and professional endeavor at the same time, you oftentimes have the lines of coworkers and friends blurred. And there are oftentimes whenever, I've had friends of mine, I've been lucky enough with a lot of the people that I've met on Twitch and, interacted with and hung out with over the years, they've actually been some really genuine, good people. And I haven't really had this experience very often, but I've known many people who have thought they had a friend, but realized they only had a coworker. And I think that's okay to do, but it's very, very delicate, the balance between those two things. And for example, like if you're friends with somebody who's getting 2,000 viewers and you're getting 25,000 or 40,000 viewers, a lot of your viewers are going to look at your friendship as a transactional one or a one-sided one, because the person who has less viewers is going to be deemed as leeching. And that's definitely a harmful perspective to have, and I think that perspective is derived primarily out of people who are unable to parse out relationships outside the context of Twitch. So that's one thing that they do fully understand is the context of Twitch and viewership, and because they can realize and see that difference, they can attribute the distrust that they have to that one thing. And I've seen that happen a lot of times. It's happened with me too, unfortunately. But I think the audience does kind of add a certain degree of complication, but it can also make it more fun whenever you're able to do streams with other people and hang out together, and also just meet a kindred spirit and have a real relationship with somebody who loves doing the same things that you like doing. And so it's the same as almost anything. There can be positive and negative outcomes, but those are some of both of them.
When it comes to your most dedicated viewers and people who've, maybe even you consider more of friends, personal friends, where do you draw the line? Do you have any boundaries when it comes to viewers and your personal relationships? Like where, someone's a viewer, they can't necessarily be on the same level of friends as like the personal friends you have, or is there no such boundary and it's just up to you?
I think people that set those boundaries and everything are I have enough social confidence, and I feel confident enough in myself to be able to make the decision on an individual basis. So for an example, I have a friend of mine, he's like actually one of my best friends, who he pretty much he made a friend because the guy watched my stream, and then he watched my friend's stream, and then the guy lived in Australia. So what ended up happening is the guy came over from Australia and he hung out with my friend in real life here in Texas, and they went to BlizzCon together. But before they did, they came over to my house and we all hung out together at my house, and the two of them convinced me to go to BlizzCon. Well, that wasn't the only reason another big reason why I ended up going, but there was, some help there with them as well. I was like, I don't want to go alone, and then they ended up going with me. So that's an example of somebody who I was, he was a viewer of mine, and then he became a viewer of my friends, and now we're actually friends. There are other people who are a little bit clingy, and they do kind of push those social boundaries in a way that does make me feel uncomfortable, and I think that's just a unfortunate outcome of the business or the stream or the space or whatever it is. But very rarely do I have like a hard and fast limit. I mean, I don't like telling people what my address is, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I just I play it as it goes. And if certain people I feel are being too attached in a way that I feel is unhealthy, and, in terms of like, I guess what you would call a parasocial relationship, that's definitely not something that I want to promote. But I think that having a healthy relationship with your viewers, and even having that be a one-on-one thing, is completely okay, as long as the people that are going into it both have the same level of expectation.
And how has meeting viewers and even streamers at events like BlizzCon, for example, how has that changed the way you view the people watching your stream, if at all?
Well, I thought there was a lot more kids, but it turns out every single time I go out somewhere, somebody recognizes me in public, it's always a fucking boomer. And I play WoW, so like, what's the surprise? But like, I hardly ever have kids. It's actually kind of funny you said that the person you interviewed was a kid, because I looked at my analytics, and like 95% of my audience is like 24 to 35 or something. It's a huge amount. So I didn't really realize that there were so many like guys that were around my age that really kind of really liked and my content resonated with. But that was a really great surprise, and I think everybody who I've met at conventions has been really relaxed and chill and respectful and funny. Like I had one guy, it was a Taco Bell. This is even as a clip of this. The guy he walks in. This is like me with like 5 of my friends, and I had just met my girlfriend at the time, like literally fucking 5 minutes ago. And he walks over to the Taco Bell thing. He pulls up his shirt, and he's got his big old fucking hairy belly with his man tits, and he says, "Asmongold, sign my tits," and he gives me a ballpoint pen. I signed his tits. I did. I was no big deal. It doesn't bother me at all. I thought it was funny. Right? It's completely okay with me. I grew up in like a neighborhood around a lot of other people. I'm not really agoraphobic at all. I don't really mind, people that are a little bit invasive to somebody else. To me, it just doesn't really bother me at all. I mean, you could say that it should, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. So, growing up around people, like I would have sleepovers, be like 4 or 5 people sleeping in the same bed, all that kind of gotcha stuff. And it never really phases me at all. So it's really hard for somebody to make me feel uncomfortable or weird physically, at least in person. But I think that honestly, it's been a good experience meeting viewers and seeing them and being able to talk to them. I really enjoy it.
This is just a little bit of maybe like a theory, but you grew up and you live in like a small town, right?
I live in Austin, Texas.
But you didn't you grow up in like a rural area?
Nope, Austin, Texas. I lived the same place my whole life.
Because I was wondering if you felt like where you grew up also has an impact on kind of how you deal with people. Whereas like growing up, I mean, Austin's kind of a big town
absolutely.
now, but it wasn't always that big, right?
Well, no. I mean, I went to a very big public school. I always did. I've been surrounded by people my whole life. It was not an irregular day for 12 people to be over at my house, and I live only with my mom, and my dad lives nearby. There's no like weird stuff like that. But yeah, my parents are divorced, so I live with my mom. And it was very easy for me to spend a lot of time with other people and hang out with them pretty much all day. I'd come home from school and, play Xbox Live with my friends from school, or go out to the park, or go to the woods, or something like that. But I think that fundamentally, having the relationship that I did with my friends and my upbringing did have a big impact on the way that I interact with people. And I think it does with everyone. But specifically with streaming, because I was always one of the, I was one of the older kids in my neighborhood. I'm kind of used to, dealing with people that are, like weird kids that are trying to like suck up to you in a way, right? So like if I have a viewer that does that or acts like that, if anything, it's nostalgic to me because it reminds me of all the times that things were like that whenever I was a kid. And so I think that my upbringing and, the way that I grew up, my childhood is like something I really do cherish. I loved it. It made me very happy even to think about now. And so if I look back on that and I see what I learned from that and how I grew as a person out of that, I'd absolutely say that it helped me become a better streamer and be a better content creator in general.
That's interesting because you talk a lot about how you grew up obviously playing WoW a lot, playing games a lot. And you also grew up with a lot of friends and a lot of people. Like,
it's because they were players 2, 3, and 4.
Wow. So you mixed the two. The people you played with were also the people you hung out with, and that created this.
Oh, well, I mean, of course, because I grew up in the 90s. Like I was born in 1990. Yeah. So we didn't have Xbox Live until 2004. What the hell do you think we did before then? Like we had to all go over to my house and play Mario Party. We had to all go over to my house and play Super Smash Brothers. This is what we did. So yeah, like all of my friends, like this is pretty much like we would even have, so like for example, like whenever I was going to high school, I'd have two of my friends, their mom would drive them over to my house. And then I had another friend that lived up the street, and then he would walk down to my house. And, we would start hanging out at like 7:30 in the morning. And we'd play Halo 2 for a good, like, almost hour before we had to go walk to the bus stop and go to school. And then we'd spend all day in school just hanging out with each other, hanging out with like our other friends, going to lunch. We played Super Smash Brothers during lunch on one of the school projectors. Very often it was super fucking fun. Then on top of that, we'd go home, ride the bus home, and then sometimes they'd come over to my house, sometimes not. And we'd do the same thing until basically we went to bed. Then we go out to the park, walk down to the store, buy a hot dog at 7-Eleven. It was great. It was fucking great. And so, yeah, I did the same thing, now that I do then, in a way.
Do you feel like the current landscape of gaming, let's say for a kid that's growing up now, I get the sense that those kinds of experiences that were from the 90s primarily and early 2000s are kind of not as prevalent because people have things like Fortnite, League, these massively multiplayer games. Do you think do you see that as having an impact in changing how people have socialized growing up, especially as gamers?
Not necessarily. I think that the biggest reason, so there was actually a time like we had like this one, it was like a 15 or 16-year-old kid or something like that in Discord. And I was like interviewing him. I was like, okay, so like you come home from school, like what do you do? Like do you guys still go out and like play in the street? Like what happens as a kid? Like what did you do whenever, you were like 12? And he told me, he was like, yeah, we pretty much did the same shit that you did. And that was really good for me to hear. But I do think that you're right. There's a lot of people who don't really have the opportunity to have that same experience. But I don't necessarily think that's because of the type of games. Because, for example, for Warcraft, I just got all my friends into the game. My friend got me into the game, and well, he convinced me to start playing the game, which is like I had bought the game during the school year, and he came over during summer, and so then we started playing. Then we got our other friends into playing, and so like a lot of my friends and even my parents started playing WoW, and it became a social experience in itself. And I think that was something I also got very lucky with. But with Fortnite or with League or something like that, especially a game like Fortnite, there's nothing that really, playing Fortnite is not predicated on the idea that you can't have real life friends or you can't spend time with them in real life. I think that really what it is that now, because you don't have the same type of social norms, like for example, like when was the last time you ever went over to your friend's house and just knocked on the door randomly without calling them or planning something out? I think that now that things are much more, much more interconnected, you don't have that same type of sporadic interaction that you used to back in the day. but I don't think that it's because of the type of games. It's just more or less because of technology and the way that that's evolved. I don't really know if that's a good or a bad thing. I think it's probably both, and it depends on who you talk to, whichever one it is. I know that for me, I used to love getting on MySpace whenever I was a kid, and it was great. But, there are other people that have had really bad experiences. And I think that the biggest difference is probably just having a close group of friends that you're around, not only where you live, but also at school. And I think those two things are probably the biggest determining factors, whether somebody has a positive or a negative relationship with like social media, for example.
You've talked a lot about how the community around World of Warcraft was hugely impactful for you growing up, and how in many ways it will never be quite the same as it was back then, even with things like classic WoW and stuff. But there is still a different sense of community.
You can never step in the same river twice.
Right. Do you feel like what you're doing now on stream, involving your community, involving your viewers, do you think WoW is the only game where you could do it quite the way you want to?
I don't know every other game, but I do know, for example, I couldn't really do it in Dark Souls. It's very hard to do it, obviously, in a single-player game like The Witcher. There are some games like maybe Minecraft or other MMOs that you can kind of create those types of experiences. But I do think that World of Warcraft does uniquely lend itself to being a game that allows people to have those social experiences. And I think that one of the appeals to my stream is that I try to emphasize the social experience as the content and not necessarily as a tool to get to the content. And I think that's been a really important factor in my own success. And also, it's something that a lot of other people don't realize as being something that's very special. A lot of people go online either to escape from the world or to relax or to make connections. And I think that having an alternate universe like an MMO fulfills all three, ideally.
The reason you still play WoW, to me, it sounds like it's because of what you're describing. It's because of having the ability to interact with so many people. Would you say that's correct?
There's a million reasons why I still play WoW. I think honestly, probably the biggest reason is because I just like the game. Like, I've tried to play other games. I've mained other games for like a short period of time. Like, I've logged over 1,000 hours into like PUBG. I put hundreds of hours into Call of Duty, but I always come back to WoW. It's just the game that I love. It's the game I've played for a long time. Now, will that be the case forever? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. But I think that one of the reasons, you're definitely right, it is a component that I do have those social connections and those personal relationships that I built up at this point, over a decade with my friends and people that I've, streamed with, and, my viewers, that I don't necessarily want to just throw away and go play another game. And so, yeah, I do think that the social investments create an investment in the game itself.
With how big your stream has gotten and how many people actually watch you, have you faced any challenges of like maybe feeling overwhelmed with how many people there are, or is that really not an issue for you?
Well, I think that there are like two different degrees of like overwhelmed. You can look at being overwhelmed from a purely functional level. So, like, for example, if I try to do something in game and I have like 40,000 viewers, 30,000 people watching, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to intercept that or make themselves part of the content or be annoying or, stream snipe in some way or another. And yeah, that can be annoying. It can also be funny. It can add flavor to the content. I know, for example, a lot of the best streams that Forzen did, in my opinion, was whenever he did PUBG and everybody would just land on him and they'd just fucking do this like Ugandan weird bullshit running after him trying to punch him to death. Like, that was really funny. And so it's not always a bad thing, but functionally, yeah, sometimes I do get overwhelmed. And with a lot of people trying to talk to me all the time, I think that can definitely happen. I know that whenever Classic came out, my stream got very, very popular, and I also was streaming a lot. And for me, I don't really consider myself an introvert or an extrovert or anything like that. I think that just like 99% of people probably, I'm a little bit of both. But personally, I need to have a lot of time by myself and time alone. And whenever I was streaming like 6 days a week or 7 days a week, I didn't really have that personal time to myself, and it kind of wore on my personality and on my mental state, and that was overwhelming. But now that I'm streaming again and my viewership is roughly the same, not really quite as much, but it's not really to be a surprise. Anyway, the point is that now I'm basically doing the same thing and I feel fine. And so I think that it's not necessarily the amount of people, but the amount of exposure to that you really kind of allow yourself to have. Like, for example, I have like open DMs on Twitter and pretty much everywhere people want to message me. And it's true that can kind of sometimes overwhelm me, but I also don't like to be like some kind of god on Mount Olympus where people aren't, worthy to talk to me or speak to me unless they have a check mark next to their name. I think that's weird. But emotionally, does it overwhelm me with the amount of viewers that I get? Never. It doesn't bother me at all. No.
And finally, like, what piece of advice would you give to someone who maybe even wants to start a stream, wants to form a community similar to what you have? Like, what's your best advice? Not necessarily for them to be successful, but when or if they do become successful, to kind of maintain a healthy relationship with that, as it seems like you have.
Be yourself. I mean, it sounds like the cringiest, most boring thing to say, but there's a reason why so many people say it. It's because oftentimes the success does change a person. It makes a person look at themselves differently, because ultimately the view of yourself is informed by the view that everybody else has of you. And so instead of just looking at yourself in the mirror, you have everybody looking at you, and those people become the mirror rather than the mirror itself. And what that ends up leading to is a person's ego and self-worth being inflated to a point to where it's unhealthy. I don't think that it's bad necessarily to have a big ego, but it's very unhealthy sometimes. And that's really what you want to avoid. So I would say that, if you see a lot of success and you think things are really going well, keep doing it. Just keep doing it and appreciate and have a degree of creative integrity with what you do. I think that's something that I'm actually probably going to make a video about this myself soon, because I see a lot of people that don't really know what to do. And if I look at like artists from the past and people that truly make good quality content and produce things that are beautiful and great, oftentimes at the very core of that is that innate spark of imagination and creativity. And the moment that you lose that and you start doing things for money, or you start doing things for viewers, or you start doing things for this, that, or the other thing, that's whenever you start to lose a connection, not only with your audience, but you also lose it with yourself, because the content is an extension of the self. You are the content. And so if you're putting out things about you, you're putting yourself out there, and that extension of yourself is something that's purely for money or purely for clout or for attention or for controversial attention, that is effectively who you really are. And unless you have a very clear differentiation between the self and the persona or the content itself, like somebody like Dr. Disrespect, for example, has obviously a very clear disconnect between who he is and his character, Dr. Disrespect, because he's literally wearing a costume. But many people don't have that, and that's whenever the lines really get blurred. And whenever you start blurring those lines, I think that's whenever the unhealthy behaviors, the unhealthy thoughts and feelings really start to seep in, and that's whenever you see the erosion of the individual who created the success. That's whenever that individual begins eroding their success and working against it. I'm not saying also to avoid going for like sponsored streams, for example, or doing things to get more viewers. I think that's a good thing, but I think that you have to do it knowing that that's what you were doing and not do too much of it. It's important not to let that be your primary goal. I do think it's healthy to also keep in mind that, yeah, you are making a living doing it, because sometimes that is a silver lining whenever, let's say you don't have a very good stream. It's like, okay, well, at least I'm doing what I love to do. So it's the age-old Socratic everything in moderation, I guess, phrase or way of thinking. And I think if you have that and just a very healthy outlook on your content, and you try not to get like a really big ego, and you also try not to hate yourself and feel like you're a failure, it's the most healthy way to go about it, in my opinion.
Asmongold, I want to thank you for your time, for your very informative insights as usual.
Well, thank you.
You really shed a lot of light, I think, on the psyche of a streamer, especially one in your position that not many people really understand unless they obviously listen to someone like you. Because it is like a very, it seems like a big deal, right? From the other side of the screen, you seem like almost a god to some people, if I should
Yeah.
say.
No,
But
I know. I don't think that it should be like that, but you're right.
and you do. I'm just amazed at how you're able to stay so grounded. And I think what you talk about being yourself, you're not viewing yourself as numbers. You're viewing yourself as who you grew up, who you formed
It's
relationships
a
with.
matter of a lifestyle too. Like for example, I was late to this interview because I was getting Torchy's tacos, and the drinks at Torchy's tacos are expensive, and so I went to McDonald's and I bought my dollar drink.
Right.
So that I've been doing that ever since I was 19 or 18, whenever I had to do it, and I haven't really changed my life a whole lot either. And I think that the way that you live your life and trying not to live outside of your means or things that are uncomfortable for you. It's absolutely a good thing to indulge in things that truly make you happy, but it's important to indulge in things that make you happy and not to make your happiness indulgence.
That's a good way to put it, for sure. All right, man. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're about to raid and stream. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate this. I'm going to include a lot of this in the video for sure, too.
I look forward to seeing it. Thank you very much. I like your videos a lot. I think that they've been a much needed breath of fresh air on YouTube. I think that they're great. So I'm glad to be a part of one.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks.
All right. I'll talk to you later. Peace.
Peace.